What's up, everybody? Tony Ferguson, once again, out here saying just things where you got to kind of do a double take. Obviously, he fought Charles Oliveira at UFC 256 just last weekend and is saying that Oliveira was mentally broken after round one. But this all comes after a bit of a prediction by our current lightweight champion, retired lightweight champion from Khabib Nurmagomedov, who said Tony Ferguson's time is finished. Now he's going to come back. Someone's going to beat him again, I believe. When you take damage like this, you're never, ever going to be the same. Never, ever. Even if you're Tony Ferguson, he took too much damage. He said that prior to the fight with Oliveira, talking about Ferguson's bout with Justin Gaethje. So before we get into the post-fight antics, let's take a look at that. Drake, do you think Khabib's right in this situation? Did he just take too much damage against Gaethje?
I mean, I would be more inclined to agree with that. Well, okay, so I mean, he says Tony's time is finished. Man, I think, okay, that part of his quote, can agree with that more, but the damage part, I mean, you know, it's not like Oliveira went out there and, you know, fought and dominated him the same way that Gaethje did, right? You know, it was more of a grappling heavy fight. And of course, he did do plenty of damage. There was great ground and pound. Damaged him with the armbar, you know, that kind of stuff too. So, I mean, that part of the quote, I don't know if I agree with. I mean, of course, that takes an effect on you. Gaethje really put it on him. And I mean, you just can look at the finish of that fight and be like, okay, wow, you know, he was messed up. So, yeah, I would say that's a part of it. But considering how this one played out, I don't know if I would say we can say he's right about that part just yet. You know, I'm going to have to see him against another striker in a more of a striking heavy fight first. Like if Oliveira would have went out there and fought primarily that kind of game plan against him, would have been very telling. I mean, for all the time that it was on the feet and when it was, he did very well, I thought. You know, Tony didn't really get any chances because he was worrying about that eventual takedown that was just all over the place. You know, Oliveira had him in that area. So I would say Khabib's, I mean, yes, for the most part. It's hard to disagree with him because Tony has just been completely outmatched in these last two fights. But I still think, let's see what the next fight tells us, right? I think can't totally count him out just yet because these guys he's facing are phenomenal. Just, you know, the very best in the division. Let's give him a step down next. You know, maybe somebody around the 8 to 10 range. See how he does against that. I would love to see him against Paul Felder. I don't know what he's ranked necessarily, but that could be very fun. That could be very fun. And you know Felder's going to dance with him. So,
Yeah. No, I mean, this is tough because I get what Khabib's saying, right? And we've seen this before in other fighters where they take a lot of damage and they never quite come back the same. They come back particularly hurt. They come back to a point of like, you know, just not looking like themselves at all. And I don't necessarily think that was the case with Tony in this one. I think, you know, Oliveira dominated him in a completely different way. And I think Oliveira was just slept on, frankly. You know, I can admit I slept on him, as we've gone over many times with on the tailgate show, with your prediction. I said, no way. But I mean, I slept on him. I did. And he's looked, yes. He's looked great. Oliveira has looked great. But my big question was, right, it was his level of competition. That's one thing I always judge. If somebody goes on a crazy streak, I always have to go back and look, okay, let's look at who they're fighting. Because as we all know, you can be a Dmitry Smolikov, get an 11-0, like I'm ready to go, and then get just dominated.
I mean, Hector Lombard is probably a good pick for that one. Unfortunately,
that's a great, yeah,
that's the best example.
But that's such a great example. So for me, looking at Oliveira's streak, you know, it had a name or two, but nothing that really stood out. Kevin Lee was his biggest win by far, which was impressive, but still, Kevin Lee has had his own troubles, right? So I wasn't quite sure he was ready for that elite step up, but he showed he was more than ready for it. Because even if Tony was on his absolute A+ game, some of the things Oliveira did, his transitions on the ground, the smoothness with which he did things, highlight Oliveira's just that good. Regardless of where Tony's skill level is out, it's a clear indication of Oliveira's skill level. So for me, I'm not ready to say That was too much damage. Tony's time's over. His time might be over because the division might have moved past him. We might be getting more new contenders. We've seen the evolution of Gaethje and Oliveira and some of these other up-and-comers that it might be that, he kind of missed his shot there, so to speak. But I don't think it was necessarily because of the damage. Nothing gave me pause where I said, man, Tony is particularly hesitant or particularly off in some aspect of his game. Did anything happen like that for you during the fight?
No, that's an excellent point. I think it was just that Oliveira was a step ahead really everywhere. I think that, it's a little bit, insulting to his performance to say that, it was Tony just not being there, because Oliveira is that fucking good, you guys. All right. I was going to say, this guy is legit, man. We've even, if you can critique the competitors, the competition that he's had, of course, on the run, but just if you've watched these last 10 years, it has been 10 years since he has been in the UFC now, the evolution of his game is undeniable, man. It is incredible. Like, his jiu-jitsu was always phenomenal. His grappling was always amazing. But I mean, it's probably gotten a little bit better each and every year. And then his striking, though, is what has caught up in particular. And we didn't get to really see it showed off as much as these last couple fights. But yeah, no, I think it's a disservice to say that, oh, Tony's just not as good enough anymore. I think it's just that Oliveira is that goddamn good now.
Yeah. And I mean, it's hard to, because you think about even Oliveira's last loss against Anthony Pettis at 145, right? Like that was a thing where Oliveira seemed to have Pettis in some trouble at parts, and then, Pettis turned around and got it done. And you kind of thought when you were watching that, here's Oliveira again. He's got flashes of brilliance, but he always kind of, falls short.
In the big fights, yeah.
Yeah, in the big fights. That's what's always happened. Here, he moves up to lightweight. He goes on a crazy run. He dominates every which way, especially his last couple fights. And then he gets to the big fight, and this time he delivers in spades. I mean, I think, as you said, we've seen him evolve, and I don't think it was because of the damage. I think Tony can definitely still win. I mean, he had some good scrambles, and he had Oliveira in a I forget which choke. It escapes me now, but he tried to get him a choke. Oliveira slipped out of it, but he wasn't.
It was the buggy choke. He was working a weird modified buggy.
Modified buggy choke. Of course, Tony Ferguson was. But he was fighting the whole time. It didn't look like he'd given up. It didn't look like he had nothing left in him. Oliveira had to be on his game the entire 15 minutes, even though it was domination, even though he was able to kind of take the fight where he wanted. You didn't see Oliveira take a break. You didn't see Tony kind of lay there and take a break. He was always looking for new angles, always scrambling. I think Tony can still do a lot in this division. I think Felder's a great matchup. I have some concerns with Tony, and I might get some flack for this. Before I mention it, make sure you like and subscribe to the video and leave us some comments. Let us know what you think about Tony's performance. Was it because of the damage? Was it because Oliveira was just that good? But I do have some concerns just with Tony's, his mindset, right? We've gone through this before. We've heard about the outside the octagon issues, if you will, where he's had to, deal with some things of that nature. And he seemed to be back to his Tony self. I won't say normal self because it's Tony and I love him for it, but he's talking about Oliveira was mentally broken in round one, and he did take a lot of damage from Gaethje on top of the other things we already know. Is it time for Tony to again, you mentioned a step down. Are we looking at a time where he maybe want to look at hanging up the gloves at some point soon? Or is that kind of out of the case at this point? Am I overblowing this? Am I out of the question here?
Yes. Yes, I think so.
Okay.
Just,
Okay.
because like we've been saying, Gaethje and Oliveira, not no slouches here, not no slouches. These aren't, back at the top 15 guys coming in and just destroying him. That would be problematic. I mean, it's still problematic how he's losing, but it'd be a really, really, telling case if that was what was happening. Just in terms of the retirement thing, I don't think we are too close to that, especially just knowing his personality and everything. I could see him being a guy who definitely fights for longer than he should have, because he's quite, quite frankly, pretty crazy for, for the most part, just to put it how it is, right? It's Tony Ferguson. It's not really an insult to him because that's just how he rolls, man.
It's true.
Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be I mean, he definitely needs to change something up, because these responses that he's had to the losses, this one in particular, are a bit maddening. A bit, it's not good, right? It's not good. And I know that Eddie Bravo was not with him for this fight. I don't know how much you guys want to play into that, put stock into that. I don't think it would have mattered too much. I'm sure it would have helped, because in this matchup, Eddie Bravo to have in your corner for this matchup, that's a great guy to have, in your corner. So I think it definitely would have given Tony some more ideas. And I mean, if you just want to look back at the Gaethje fight, Eddie Bravo was calling for the Imanari role, right? He was calling for it, and Tony listened to him. So, hey, just like seeing the evidence of, hey, he does listen to his corners. Whatever advice Eddie would have given him for this very heavily grappling-oriented matchup would have been very interesting to see. So that kind of sucks that he wasn't there, just to see how much would have changed. But yeah, man, in terms of just reassessing things and going into the next fight and learning from your losses, which doesn't seem like he is. That's a big issue, right?
Yeah, and I think I'm glad you checked me there, because you're right. I think him going back to the drawing board, switching some things up, making some adjustments is better than him hanging up the gloves at this point. Because, I mean, I'm not trying to say that he doesn't have it in him, right? I mean, again, we kept fighting, kept doing stuff. The fact that he didn't tap out from that armbar is just ridiculous. And I
any
love to
other
see Tony,
human.
any other human would have. But and I love to see Tony fight. And so I think that's a better call. I'm glad you checked me on that, because yes, I think if he goes to the drawing board, if he learns from those mistakes, then I think he still has a path. He's 35, I believe. He's still got some time that he can make some adjustments, maybe get his way back into the title picture and get that belt that he really wants. And again, if he doesn't, then hopefully he doesn't stay in too long if he ends up, taking some more losses on his next couple outings. Hopefully he knows when to call it quits, but I believe you're probably right in that I don't feel like he's the type of guy to do that. So again, let us know in the comments what you think about Tony Ferguson's performance. If you think Khabib was right, if it was just the Gaethje fight, if I'm just way off of my knocker for even suggesting that based on other outside things, maybe Tony, think about hanging him up. Let us know. And anything else before we wrap this up, Drake?
Yeah, I think that there's something that we should mention here before we go. I want to get your thoughts on Big John McCarthy. I think is the first guy to put it out there, but afraid of Tony potentially being on the chopping block now, a part of the big 60 or whatever we'll end up with. Just, do you think that that's possible? I'm not sure really what I think about it yet.
I don't. I think that's, in the context of that conversation, I think McCarthy was kind of trying to find a name that would grab some attention, and he reached out and said Tony. I mean, dude went on an insane run, has lost 2 back-to-back against 2 of the best in the division, as we just mentioned. And even then, in the Gaethje fight, he, again, kept fighting. It wasn't out of it. In the Oliveira fight, kept going after stuff. And he's far too entertaining, and he's made enough of a name for himself at this point that it doesn't make sense to cut him from a business perspective. He's not, one of these guys that's, when you look at Romero or some of these other guys, right? Especially now that information's come out that Romero was angling for a contender fight or a title fight. I mean, he's had plenty of chances, and it's one of those things of how many title shots do you give the guy? He's got to go take a step down, kind of work his way back, kind of hit the back of the line type thing. He wouldn't do that. And that's more of a threat to the UFC's business, because as shallow as 185 and 205 is, having a guy that's really good just up in like the number 1 to 5 spot, knocking off the guys that just climb into those spots, but not really having him get to a point where he's a title contender, makes him the most highest paid gatekeeper ever. And not to mention his age. I mean, there was a lot of factors there. With Tony, I mean, he's too entertaining. There are too many people that want to see him fight. Yep. He's been on way too good of a streak for them to cut Tony. Either he's really done something personal, like Dana just hates him and we don't know about it, or they are like, if they're going to depths where they're cutting Tony, then I would imagine there'd be a whole bunch more shocking names, and they must be in real financial straits. And I don't believe that's true. So I think the likelihood of Tony Ferguson getting cut, as John McCarthy said, is probably, I don't know, 0.5%, I would say. I mean, it's so low. There's no way they'll get rid of him. It'd be terrible business sense. And that's not what they do. So glad you brought that up.
Yeah, man. I think that you summed it up beautifully. I completely agree. So I have nothing.
Well, there you go. Another comment for you guys to give us. Do you think Tony Ferguson could be cut? Do you think he should because of the money he's making? The answer is no, but go ahead and tell me why if you think yes, so we can talk about it.
So we can tell you you're wrong.
So we can tell you you're wrong.